Say it again, he whispered, his voice hoarse, trembling with everything he could no longer hide. I love you. She breathed, her hands cradling his face. I love you so much it scares me. And just like that, everything changed. This isn't just a story about passion. It's about obsession that turns into devotion. About a man who had everything except love until he met the one woman who shattered his world and rebuilt it with tenderness. From the moment they locked eyes across a crowded room, to the whispered vows under golden light, to the day they held their daughter for the first time. This is their story. A story of two souls that weren't just meant to meet. They were meant to belong. So if you believe in love that burns, heals, and endures, stay with us. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Shining Stories, where every tale is a piece of the heart. Let's begin. Night settled gently over Westridge, a city stitched in golden light and quiet power, far above its humming streets in a dim rooftop lounge where laughter echoed softly against glass walls. Caleb Rowan, just 32, sat alone beneath the flicker of low chandeliers. He wasn't known for soft things. His name appeared in business reports, whispered in elite circles attached to terms like investor strategist and lately untouchable. People admired his control, they feared it more. But tonight something stirred beneath that carefully composed surface. He didn't know what it was, only that the drink in his hand tasted dull, and the silence around him felt heavier than usual. Then, without warning, it shifted. She stepped in like a pause in the noise. Maya Ellison, 25, didn't belong here, not in this world of expensive perfume and curated smiles. But she walked with the kind of quiet strength that drew attention without asking for it. Her dark hair fell in loose waves over her shoulders, and the simple black dress she wore said less about wealth and more about grace. There was a stillness to her, a softness wrapped in something stronger. Caleb noticed her the moment she entered, and for once, he didn't look away. Their eyes met briefly, long enough for Maya to feel her pulse stutter. She turned quickly, choosing a seat near the far end of the bar, hoping to disappear back into the background. But Caleb was already standing. He approached without the usual armor of detachment he wore. His voice, when he spoke, was steady but low, curious, not commanding. You seem like someone who prefers quieter places, he said, more observation than flirtation. Maya looked up, unsure whether to be cautious or amused. His presence was sharp, but not unkind. And you don't strike me as someone who makes small talk, she replied, calm but guarded. He let out a breath, not quite a laugh, but close. Maybe I don't, but something about tonight feels different. There was a pause, not uncomfortable, just full. What are you drinking? He asked. She hesitated, then answered, something light. I don't usually come to places like this. Caleb nodded. Then let's pretend it is just a quiet place tonight. He didn't ask why she was there. Not yet. But as he sat beside her, a thought he hadn't allowed in years whispered through the edges of his mind. Maybe not everything meaningful needs to be planned. She smiled faintly and nodded, her fingers curling at the edge of her dress like they were looking for an escape. I do not come to places like this often. Maya admitted, it is not really mine. Caleb tilted his head, intrigued. His gaze softened not with pity, but with a quiet curiosity. Then what brought you here tonight? For a moment she did not answer. Then with a breath barely heard above the music, she murmured, sometimes you just need to be somewhere else, even if it is only for a little while. He watched her closely, not the words, he had heard words like that before, but the way she said them, the stillness in her voice, the tired weight behind her smile. There was more she did not say, and oddly, Caleb found himself wishing she would. They sat there longer than expected, not talking about anything in particular, but with her silence felt easy. The conversation drifted from places they had never been to, songs half remembered, to the little things people say when they stop pretending. She laughed soft, unguarded, and something in him shifted. It had been so long since someone had spoken to him like this, with no calculation, no expectation, just presence. One drink turned into another. The air between them thickened with something unspoken. Caleb leaned in slightly, his voice lower now, quieter. "Come with me." Maya's breath caught, her eyes flicked up to his. "Where?" He did not smile, he did not need to. "My place." There was no pressure in his tone, no demand, just invitation. But behind it, something else lingered, a hunger that was not only physical, something he himself barely understood. She should have said no, but she didn't. She nodded. The ride to his penthouse was quiet, but the silence between them had changed. It pulsed with anticipation, with questions neither of them asked. Inside, the city lights painted golden streaks across the polished floor. Before she could take in the view, Caleb had already turned to her, his hand finding the small of her back, guiding her toward him. "You have no idea what you are doing to me." He whispered, his breath grazing her skin like heat before a flame. Maya's heart pounded. She looked up at him, this man who just hours ago had been a stranger. "I want this," she said softly, her voice shaking, but clear. That was all he needed. His lips claimed hers, not in haste, but in intensity. His hands moved slowly, like he was learning her, not just touching her. She let herself get lost in it, in him. But then, as he laid her gently on the bed, something inside her paused. She froze. Caleb pulled back immediately, reading her the way he read boardrooms, sharp and fast. "Maya!" She bit her lip, looking down. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. "I never have. I mean I have not before." It took him a second, but then understanding flickered in his eyes. Not shock, not frustration. Something deeper. "You are a virgin," he said quietly. She nodded, cheeks burning. She waited for rejection, disappointment, but none came. Instead, Caleb cupped her face, his voice suddenly hoarse. "You should have told me. I thought it didn't matter. It does," he said simply, "more than you think." He brushed his thumb across her lips as if memorizing the shape of them. "I want you, Maya, but only if you are sure." She met his gaze, and for the first time in a long time, she saw something raw in someone else's eyes. No masks, no games, just him. "I am sure," she whispered. That night, he did not just take her. He held her like something rare. He kissed her slowly, deeply, as if each touch was a vow, and when it was over, neither of them would ever be the same again. Wrapped in the stillness of early morning, Maya lay nestled in the circle of Caleb's arms, her breath shallow, her body still warm from the night that had passed. He held her close, his lips brushing against her forehead, his voice low, unsteady. "I need more nights like this with you." Maya's heart skipped. She had come here thinking it would be just one night, a mistake maybe, or at best a fleeting memory. But nothing about this felt fleeting now. The first blush of dawn slipped quietly through the floor-to-ceiling windows, painting soft gold across the room. Caleb was already awake, his gaze fixed on the woman sleeping beside him, as if afraid she might vanish with the morning light. He could still feel the shape of her in his hands, the tremble in her breath when she whispered his name. He had never touched innocence before. Not like this, not with care, not with reverence, and it had undone something inside him. What happened between them was more than heat, more than escape. It had torn through his certainty like a blade, leaving something raw, exposed, and unfamiliar behind. He tightened his arms around her instinctively, as if holding her closer might stop the shift happening inside him. Maya stirred. Her lashes fluttered, before her eyes opened sleepy and soft, trying to remember where she was. And then she saw him. Caleb's breath caught. Her hair was tousled, her lips slightly parted and tinted with the color of last night's kisses. "Good morning," he said, his voice rough quiet. She blinked up at him, realization settling gently over her. Her cheeks flushed as she shifted slightly beneath the sheets. "Morning," she replied, barely more than a whisper. Caleb reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. His fingers lingered soft against her skin. "How do you feel?" he asked, slower now, not as certain. Maya hesitated, her eyes drifting toward the window. She had given a part of herself to someone she barely knew, and yet she felt no regret. "Safe," she finally said, then smiled, shy but true. Strangely whole. Caleb's eyes darkened. A slow curve pulled at his lips. Not pride, not conquest. Something possessive. Something quiet and dangerous. "Good," he said, leaning closer. His voice dropped to a whisper against her ear. "Because I am not done with you." A tremor ran through her. She had believed this was a single night, that by morning she would slip away without consequence. But the look in his eyes told her she was wrong. Caleb had no intention of letting her go. Her lips parted, about to speak, maybe to protest, maybe to ask what this meant, but his mouth found hers first. The kiss was slow consuming, and all the words she held melted away. His hands remembered her as if they had known her for years, and just like that, she was his again. Not because he asked, but because she could not stop herself. When at last the room settled into stillness, once more, Maya sat up, the silk sheets pulled loosely around her body. She watched as Caleb stood near the window, fastening each button of his shirt with practiced calm. He looked like he belonged to a different world, polished, controlled, untouchable, and somehow she was now part of that world. Caleb adjusted his tie with quiet precision, each motion a reminder of the world he belonged to, a world built on control structure and decisions made without emotion. Maya watched from across the room, still wrapped in his silk sheets, feeling the distance between them grow as he prepared to return to that life. But then he turned. "Stay." It was not a plea. It was not a question. It was a statement wrapped in steel. Her breath caught Caleb. "I need more than one night," he cut in. Stepping toward her, voice low but intense, his arms braced on either side of her, caging her in without touch. "I do not want this to end here." Her heart beat wildly, her thoughts tangled between fear and longing. "We barely know each other," she whispered. He leaned in closer. "Then let's change that." His fingers grazed her cheek. Tender grounding. "Stay with me." God, she wanted to. The part of her that had tasted warmth in his arms begged for it. But reality clawed at her edges. "I can't," she said almost apologetically. "I have things I need to take care of." He stilled his jaw, tensed. He didn't like the idea of her walking away. Not now, not after what they had shared. "What kind of things?" His voice sharpened slightly. Maya looked away. "It's complicated." For the first time, hesitation appeared in her voice, and that did something to him, something unexpected. He gently lifted her chin, urging her to face him. "Tell me." She took a breath. It felt heavier than it should have. "I'm barely holding things together," she admitted. "I work long hours, 2 different jobs just to keep my rent paid. Last night, I just needed to forget for a moment." A storm passed behind Caleb's eyes. Anger not at her, but at the world that had worn her down. "You should have told me," he said, voice tight. Maya shook her head, her voice small. "It's not your problem." "It is now." She blinked. "Caleb." "I'm going to take care of it," he said firmly. "I won't let you keep struggling." "Not when I can change that." Maya's heart twisted. No one had ever offered to help her without expecting something in return, and yet the look in Caleb's eyes, fierce and unwavering, said he meant it. Before she could answer, he kissed her. Slow, steady, unrelenting. When he pulled back, his forehead pressed lightly to hers. "No more arguments," he murmured. "You're mine now, and I take care of what's mine." Her breath shook. Every instinct told her to say no, to keep distance, to protect herself. But something deeper, something truer knew the line had already been crossed. This was not a mistake. Not anymore. Caleb Rowan had built his life around order, strategy, and emotionless decisions. Attachments were weaknesses. Vulnerability had no place in his world, but she had ruined that in a single night. Now alone in his office, glass walls framing the city below, he sat motionless, surrounded by the things that once gave him pride. None of it mattered. Not today. His mind was full of her. The sound of her voice, the way she gave herself to him, fragile but unafraid. The thought of another man touching her, hearing her breath catch the way it had with him, sent something cold and violent curling through his chest. She was his, and he would make sure she knew it. Caleb stared at the city below, fingers tightening around his phone as he made the call. The moment his assistant picked up his voice, turned sharp steel, cloaked in velvet. "I want everything on Maya Ellison, where she lives, where she works, her financial records, all of it." There was no hesitation on the other end. "Yes, Mr. Rowan, I'll have it within the hour." He ended the call without another word, his jaw clenched, a storm rising behind his eyes. He had told her he would take care of everything, and he had meant it. Not out of pity, not out of guilt, but because something inside him refused to let her go back to a life that had bruised her spirit and buried her softness. She belonged here now, in his world, in his arms. And God help him. The thought of her whispering his name in that voice, breathless, trembling, was enough to unravel the control he had spent years perfecting. He smirked slightly. She had no idea what she had awakened inside him. Something dark, something possessive, something that would not let her slip away. Meanwhile, Maya stood outside the peeling door of her apartment building, arms full of unopened envelopes. Red stamped notices peeked from the corners, reminders that her time, her options, her peace were running out. She sighed deep and slow, as if the air itself carried weight. Just last night she had let herself be touched, not just by a man, but by the illusion of safety. And now, in the harsh morning light, reality waited at her doorstep. Rent was due. Her fridge was nearly empty, and that beautiful, chaotic dream she had stumbled into, it didn't belong here. Caleb Rowan didn't belong here. He was not made for late bills and flickering hallway lights. He was silk ties, darkened penthouses, and certainty. She should forget him. But then her phone buzzed in her coat pocket. Her breath hitched when she saw the name. Caleb. The message was short. "I don't like waiting, Maya. You didn't call." Her chest tightened. She stared at the screen, unsure what she feared more, that he meant it or that he didn't. Her fingers trembled as she typed back. "I didn't think you wanted me to." His response came within seconds. "I told you I need more nights with you." She swallowed, hands shaky. His words weren't a request, they were a declaration. "Caleb, I don't know if this is a good idea." Minutes passed. Nothing. Her heart dropped. Maybe that was it. Maybe he'd realized it had been a mistake, that she wasn't built for his world after all. But then the phone rang. She hesitated only for a breath before answering. "Maya." His voice came through low and commanding, with the force of a wave crashing into still water. "Why are you hesitating? I don't know what this is," she admitted, barely holding her voice steady. "I don't know what you want from me." There was silence. Then his voice dropped even lower. "I want you, and I do not share." She closed her eyes. His words wrapped around her, dangerously warm. "Where are you?" he asked. "I just got home," she whispered. "Good, stay there." The call ended. She stared at the screen, her heart thudding in her chest. Stay there. Why was he coming? Before she could untangle her thoughts, a black car pulled up to the curb, sleek and silent. The driver stepped out dressed sharply, his posture precise. Miss Ellison. She nodded slowly. Mr. Rowan sent me. He's waiting for you. Her heart slammed against her ribs. How did he know where she lived? How did he find her so quickly? Fear and awe clashed in her chest as she looked toward the car. She should have turned away, but instead her feet moved forward toward him, toward the storm. She could no longer pretend she wasn't already in Maya's pulse pounded in her ears. Every step she took toward the sleek black car screamed a warning, walk away. But her feet betrayed her heart. With one breath, she slid into the back seat. The door shut behind her with a soft finality. The drive was wordless, thick with a tension that wrapped itself around her like a storm cloud. When the car stopped, her breath caught. A towering glass building rose before her, sharp against the sky. It was unmistakable, the heart of Rowan Enterprises. What was she doing here? Before she could collect her thoughts, the driver opened her door and silently led her to a private elevator. They ascended in silence, the hum of the machinery, the only sound between her thoughts. As the doors parted, he was there, Caleb, leaning against his desk, like he had been waiting not for minutes, but for her. His gaze locked onto her, with a force that made her forget how to breathe. He wore a black suit, sharp and precise, but the loosened tie and the faint crease in his collar told her he hadn't been still for long. He moved. In 2 strides, he was in front of her, hands finding her waist, pulling her close. Maya, he said, his voice rough with restraint. I told you, I don't wait well. Her lips parted, her mind scrambling for words, but he didn't give her time to finish. His mouth claimed hers in a kiss that seared through her, stealing the breath from her lungs. His grip was firm, possessive, not hurting, but grounding, as if touching her was the only way he could believe she was real. When he finally pulled back, his eyes burned into hers. Did you really think I would let you go? She trembled beneath his gaze. Caleb, this is happening so fast. He smirked, slow, deliberate, his thumb brushing the corner of her mouth. Not fast enough. His voice dropped, dark and undeniable. Say it. Her breath caught. Say what his eyes narrowed, not unkind, but demanding. That you're mine. Her thoughts fought for reason, but with his hands on her waist, with the way he looked at her like she was the only thing that existed, she couldn't lie to herself. I'm yours, she whispered. Caleb's breath shuddered out of him. He pulled her into another kiss, this one deeper, more desperate. It was as if her hesitation had driven him to the edge. His arms wrapped around her, tightly eliminating any space between them until she could feel the wild rhythm of his heartbeat echoing her own. There was a strength in his touch that frightened her, not because it threatened her, but because it unraveled her. She had never wanted anything this much. You have no idea what you've done to me, Maya. He growled against her lips. I warned you, I don't share, and now that you're mine, I will never let you go. A tremor ran through her. She wasn't even sure what she had meant to say, but it didn't matter. Caleb had already decided. With effortless strength, he lifted her into his arms. She gasped softly, clinging to him without thinking. He carried her through the vast expanse of his office, not speaking, not hesitating, as if there was only one place in the world she belonged. At the far end of the room, beside a window that overlooked the glowing city, he laid her gently onto the leather couch. Then he leaned over her, caging her in with his arms, his gaze never leaving hers. You belong to me now, he murmured, his lips brushing against the delicate skin just below her ear, and Maya knew there was no going back. His lips hovered near the hollow of her neck. Say it again. Maya's heart thundered so loudly, she wondered if he could feel it beneath her skin. Caleb's gaze burned with something untamed, not just desire, but a fierce, undeniable claim. He needed her to say it. Not for his ego, but for something deeper, darker. The part of him that had decided she was his the moment she stepped into that bar, the moment her eyes met his and didn't flinch, and maybe he had been hers too. "I'm yours," she whispered, her voice barely audible, a confession, a surrender, a truth. A sound tore from his throat, low and guttural, as his mouth found hers again. This kiss wasn't gentle, it wasn't careful. It was the kind of kiss that devours, that strips away thought, that brands. His body pressed against hers, and suddenly there was no space, no air, only heat, only the pulse of everything unspoken between them. His fingers found the curve of her waist, tracing familiar lines, as if rediscovering what he couldn't bear to lose. Every touch sent fire rushing through her, curling into places that had never known want like this. "I need you," Caleb murmured against her lips, the desperation in his voice stark and raw. "I thought I could wait. I can't. I need all of you." Maya's breath hitched. She should have felt overwhelmed. She should have questioned this hunger that clung to every inch of him, but she didn't. Because when he touched her, when his hands moved over her skin like a promise, she felt like the only woman in the world. No one had ever made her feel that way. She reached up, her fingers tangling in his hair, pulling him closer, pouring everything into a kiss that left them both gasping. Caleb groaned deep and unrestrained, the last remnants of his composure slipping away. When they finally pulled apart, his forehead rested against hers, his breath uneven, his hands still gripping her hips. "Move in with me." The words were barely more than a murmur, but they struck her like thunder. Maya blinked. "What?" He lifted his head, meeting her eyes without hesitation. "Come live with me," he repeated, his voice steady, even as desire still clung to every word. "I won't have you struggling, living in that apartment, worrying about bills. I told you I protect what's mine." Her heart pounded so violently it hurt. Just days ago, she had been nothing more than a stranger. Now he wanted her in his home, in his world. "Caleb, this is happening so fast." She breathed. "This is not up for debate," he said, cutting through her hesitation with quiet finality. "You are mine, Maya, and I do not let go of what I claim." She opened her mouth to protest, but the words withered in her throat, because the truth was, she was already his. She had crossed the line the moment she had followed him into that night, and there was no finding her way back. As she looked into his eyes, so full of fire and certainty, she knew it. There was no undoing this. No walking away from Caleb Rowan. Not now. Not ever. The word barely left Maya's lips. It trembled in the air between them, fragile as her breath. Caleb's hands pressed gently but firmly against her waist, pulling her impossibly close. His breath brushed her skin, warm and unyielding. "Say yes." It was not a suggestion. His voice was low, threaded with heat and control, commanding, but not cruel. "Don't fight me, Maya. I want you here. With me, always." The intensity in his voice sent a wave of longing rushing through her, crashing hard against the fading edges of her doubt. How could she say no to a man who didn't just ask to keep her, but needed to? She had expected him to be distant cold, a billionaire playing games, but he wasn't playing. He wanted her not as a moment, not as a fantasy, but as something he couldn't bear to lose. Caleb. Her voice cracked, a whisper of reason trying to hold on. "This is too fast." He let out a low, frustrated sound, not anger but desperation barely kept in check. Fast, he repeated, his lips brushing the curve of her neck. "I haven't been able to think about anything else since last night. You're in my head, Maya, under my skin. I've never wanted anyone like this." His words didn't just warm her skin, they branded her. "I don't care how fast this feels," he murmured. "All I know is, I want you in my bed, in my arms every single night, and I won't let you walk away from that." His touch deepened, his hands gliding beneath the hem of her blouse, fingers skimming the curve of her waist, like he was learning her again, mapping out something that already belonged to him. Her body responded before her mind could catch up. Caleb. She breathed, her voice unsteady. His lips curled against her skin in a slow, knowing smile. "Say yes," he whispered, voice rough with need. "Say you're mine." His hand moved higher, slow, reverent, until her breath caught in her throat. Say it. She was unraveling beneath him, undone not by force, but by the sheer weight of being wanted, truly wanted. She had never belonged to anyone before, had never given herself so fully. But now, as he held her like something sacred, touched her, like a man undone, she knew the truth. She was already his, in body, in heart. In the quiet corners of herself, she had never dared to share. "Yes," she whispered, her voice breaking with surrender. "I'm yours." Caleb's eyes darkened, a flicker of something primal flashing through them before he crashed his mouth against hers. The kiss was searing absolute, a vow spoken in silence. His arms closed around her as he pulled her against him, as if he could somehow fuse their bodies into one. Maya gasped, her hands diving into his hair as she held on, not for balance, but for anchoring. In one swift motion, he lifted her effortlessly, carrying her through the open door of the adjoining bedroom, his steps sure, his grip unshakable. The door thudded closed behind them, sealing off the outside world. He laid her down on the bed as if she were something both precious and powerful. Hovering above her, his eyes burned with unspoken promises. "You have no idea what you do to me," he said, voice-thick fingertips brushing along her jaw. He tilted her face upward gently. "You drive me mad, Maya." And as his hands moved lower, slow and deliberate, exploring her, like she was something holy, Maya let herself fall into the fire, into him, into everything she never knew she had craved, until now. His lips traced a path down her neck, slow and reverent, each kiss sinking deeper into her skin as if he were trying to mark her from the inside out. His hands mapped her body like he was memorizing it, not with greed, but with something far more dangerous. Devotion, time, lost all shape. The night became a blur of hushed promises and breathless gasps, of tangled limbs and heat that never seemed to end. Caleb didn't just take her. He worshipped her. He kissed her like she was sacred, touched her like she was irreplaceable. And for the first time in her life, Maya didn't feel desired. She felt cherished, and that terrified her. Because as she lay curled against his chest, the rhythm of his breathing grounding her in the quiet aftermath, she realized the truth she hadn't dared speak. She was falling for him. Hard Caleb's arm slid tighter around her waist, anchoring her to him. He pressed a soft kiss to her temple, his voice rough with emotion. "I don't want just nights, Maya," he murmured. "I want all of it. I want forever." Her breath caught. She turned to face him, her gaze searching his as if trying to find the part of him that might be playing pretend, but there was no pretense in his eyes, only heat and certainty. "You're mine," he said simply, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. "And I'm not letting you go." And in that moment, Maya knew she was already too far gone, because as dangerous and consuming as his love might be, she didn't want to escape it. She lay in his arms, her body still alive with the echoes of what they had shared, her heart racing under the slow, soothing circles he drew on her back. His warmth should have calmed her, but instead it stirred something deeper. It made her ache, the way he touched her, the way he saw her like she was the only thing in a world full of noise. It overwhelmed her. Caleb tightened his hold, his voice a low vibration through her ear. "You're thinking too much." She blinked, startled by how easily he read her. Her fingers brushed along his jaw, tracing the sharp lines that felt too real to be part of any dream. Us. It's all happening so fast. She admitted, her voice barely more than a breath. He let out a soft, almost amused hum, the corner of his mouth lifting. Not fast enough. His fingers found her chin, tilting her face toward his. His gaze was dark, intense, but not wild. Controlled, intentional. I want more of you. More nights, more mornings. I want you here beside me every single day. His thumb brushed her lower lip, his voice dropping into something rough and tender, all at once. Tell me you want that too. Her body answered before her voice did, heart racing, breath catching, but when the words came, they were real. I do. Maya whispered. I want this. I want you. A flicker of satisfaction sparked in his eyes, fierce, protective. Without a word, he rolled her beneath him, his body settling over hers, pressing her gently but firmly into the mattress. His mouth claimed hers with a hunger that spoke of more than lust. It was need, unrelenting and all-consuming. His hands traced every inch of her, slow and reverent, as if reaffirming everything she had just given him. She moaned softly against his lips, her fingers threading through his hair, anchoring herself to the only thing that made sense in that moment. Him. He broke the kiss, his lips drifting down her neck in a trail of fire. Say it again, he growled. Her heart pounded. Her voice was unsteady. I want you, Caleb. Only you. Something in him snapped. A sound low, rough rumbled from deep in his chest as he kissed her again with more urgency, more desperation, as if each moment apart would be unbearable. And as the night deepened around them, the space between them disappeared, completely replaced by whispered vows, lingering touches, and the quiet promise of something far more dangerous than desire. Forever, the air still carried traces of last night, of fevered touches and whispered moans that had disappeared into the dark. Caleb had consumed her body and soul with a kind of devotion Maya had never imagined. And she had let him. She had let him erase her fears, kiss away her hesitation, and claim her in a way that felt terrifyingly real. As the first blush of morning bled through the velvet curtains, Maya stirred her limbs heavy and sore in a way that made her smile. She was still wrapped in his arms, his chest pressed firmly against her back. Caleb was awake. She could feel it in the way his fingers traced slowly along her arm, not urgent, just lingering. Morning, she murmured, her voice low and raw. He smiled against her skin, slow and wicked. Morning, he echoed. And just so we're clear, I have no intention of letting you leave this bed anytime soon. Maya laughed softly, turning her face toward his. I have work, she reminded him, and so do you. His expression changed, instantly darkening with resistance. His grip on her waist tightened. You're not going back to that job, he said, flat and final. She blinked. What you told me, how close you've been to drowning. 2 jobs. Barely scraping by. He reached up, brushing a lock of hair away from her face. I told you I take care of what's mine. You don't have to do that anymore. Maya sat up slowly, wrapping the sheet around herself as she looked at him. Caleb, I appreciate you, I really do, but I can't just stop working. His jaw flexed. Why not? I can give you everything. She reached for his hand and held it between hers gently. Because I need to know. I can stand. Not just because you're holding me up, but because I still can on my own. He exhaled sharply, raking a hand through his messy hair. You're stubborn and you're possessive, she replied, a hint of amusement in her voice. A smirk tugged at his lips. Damn right I am. He pulled her back into his arms, lips brushing over her shoulder. Fine, work for now, but I'm still moving you in. No arguments. She sighed, her head resting against his chest. There was no winning with him. But maybe she didn't want to win. Maybe being his didn't feel like losing anything at all. The sunlight grew stronger, pouring gold across the room, but it wasn't the light that warmed her, it was him, his body molded against hers, his embrace firm and unyielding. Even in sleep, Caleb was no longer speaking. He had drifted off again, his face buried in the curve of her neck, his breath steady and warm, but even asleep, his arms stayed tight around her, like he feared she might slip away. Maya had no intention of leaving. Not when every part of her body, heart, and something deeper still needed him. She turned slowly in his arms, her fingers brushing over the strong lines of his jaw, the stubble rough beneath her touch. This man, this powerful, guarded, often unreachable man, was utterly at peace beside her. Caleb Rowan, the ruthless billionaire with a heart locked behind walls of steel, looked soft, real, like maybe this was the one place in the world where he didn't have to pretend. And in that moment, as her heart twisted inside her chest, Maya knew something had shifted. She was no longer just part of a night. She was part of him. Before she could say a word, his arm pulled her closer in his sleep, his body curling protectively around hers, a silent promise she hadn't known she needed. And just like that, she stopped wondering if she should fall, because it was already too late. A low hum rumbled through Caleb's chest as she traced the edge of his jaw with quiet reverence. "You're staring," he murmured, voice, roughened by sleep lips, curving into a slow, wicked smile. Maya startled slightly as his eyes opened, still dark, with want, but tinged with something deeper, something far more dangerous than desire, possession. "I wasn't," she lied, trying to ease herself from his arms. But Caleb only tightened his grip, rolling her beneath him in one smooth motion. "Liar," he whispered, brushing his thumb over her kiss-swollen lips. "You can't look away, just like I can't stop looking at you." Her breath hitched as his hands moved down her sides, igniting a familiar fire that made her toes curl. "Caleb." She barely got the word out before his mouth was on hers, deep, claiming, relentless. His body pressed her into the mattress like he needed to fuse their bodies into one. Maya moaned into the kiss, her fingers weaving through his dark hair, giving in once more to the pull that never let up. He didn't just want her, he devoured her, and she let him again. When he finally pulled back, breath uneven and eyes burning, his voice came low and rough. "You're mine." Maya looked up at him, her chest rising and falling beneath his weight. She traced the lines of his face, her voice soft but certain. "I'm yours." Caleb exhaled sharply, like her words had broken through some tightly held restraint. He buried his face in the curve of her neck, his lips branding her skin with every kiss. "I'm keeping you, Maya," he murmured. "No matter what it takes, I won't let you go." A shiver raced through her, a delicious mix of fear and something deeper, something dangerously close to wanting the same. Time passed in a blur of tangled sheets and lingering touches. When he finally let her move, she slid out of bed, her legs still unsteady. Caleb propped himself up on one elbow, a lazy, satisfied smirk playing on his lips as he watched her reach for her clothes. "Where do you think you're going?" Maya arched a brow, buttoning her blouse to work. The smirk vanished. His expression darkened. "I told you. You don't need to work anymore." She sat at the edge of the bed, sighing. "Caleb, I appreciate everything I do, but I can't just give that up. I need to know I can take care of myself." His jaw tightened. "You're mine now. That means I take care of you." She reached for his hand, squeezing gently. "I don't want to be just someone you protect. I need to stand on my own, too. That's who I am." He stared at her for a long moment, then let out a reluctant breath. "Fine," he muttered, brushing a lock of hair behind her ear. "For now." She leaned in, pressing a soft kiss to his lips. "Good. Because I really have to go." His eyes narrowed, but he didn't argue. Not out loud, but she could feel the weight of his gaze as she moved through the room, as if he was memorizing every step away from him. As she picked up her purse, his voice came again, quieter this time. "Come back to me tonight." Her heart stuttered. She turned, meeting his gaze. "I will." He smiled. Not cocky, not cruel, satisfied good. Because if you don't, I'll come find you. Maya rolled her eyes, trying to mask the smile that tugged at her lips. Caleb Rowan was impossible. But heaven help her. He was also irresistible, and deep down she knew she was already his. Maya stepped out of Caleb's penthouse with legs that still trembled beneath her. Her skin still burned with the imprint of his touch. Every inch of her felt branded not just wanted but claimed. What had happened between them wasn't just passion. It was something far more intense, raw, consuming, addictive. She could still feel him, the press of his mouth against her throat, the way his voice had wrapped around her like silk and steel. "You're mine, Maya. Say it." And she had said the words like a prayer, and now she couldn't take them back. As she stepped into the cool morning air, the city roaring quietly around her, she tried to steady her breath. But how could she when every part of her still pulsed with memory? Her life had once been simple, predictable, safe. Until Caleb Rowan stormed in and tore through every rule she had ever written for herself. Now everything felt unrecognizable, even herself. A cab slowed beside the curb. She raised her hand, grateful for the distraction. She needed space, air, time to think. But just as she closed the car door behind her, her phone buzzed in her bag. She didn't need to look to know who it was. Still, her heart skipped when she saw his name, Caleb. She hesitated only for a breath, then answered. "You didn't text me when you left." His voice, low, velvet-wrapped steel, sent a shiver down her spine. "I didn't think I needed to," she said softly. "You do." There was no malice in his tone, only certainty. "I need to know where you are." Maya, always warmth, curled in her chest, but so did something else. A flicker of unease. "Caleb, I can't have you monitoring every move I make. I need to breathe." A pause followed. A silence that crackled, then softer, more dangerous. "I can't give you space, not when I'm already addicted to you." Her heart twisted. She should tell him it was too much, that he was too much, that obsession wasn't love. But instead, "I'll see you tonight." His answer was a quiet, satisfied hum. "Good. Because I don't know what I'd do if you stayed away." The call ended. Maya stared out the window, city lights blurring with her thoughts. Her pulse hadn't slowed, her hands hadn't stopped shaking. She was falling, and Caleb was pulling her deeper with every word, every whisper, every lingering hold. By the time she arrived at work, her thoughts were a storm. Her co-workers passed by with smiles and greetings, but they barely registered. She nodded absently, trying to ground herself. At her desk, she opened a file numbers and charts, staring back blankly. But all she could think about was the way his hands had held her, like she belonged only to him. The scent of him still clung to her skin. The feel of his body still lingered on her own. She didn't even hear her name at first, Maya. She looked up to see her boss, Mr. Adams, watching her with concern. "You all right?" he asked. "You seem distracted." She forced a smile, shaking her head lightly. "I'm okay." "Just didn't sleep much." He gave her a look, half knowing, half worried. "Well, get some rest if you can. We've got that meeting later and I need you sharp." She nodded quickly. "Of course." He walked away, and for a moment Maya allowed herself to breathe. But then, her phone buzzed again. Another message from him. "Caleb, you skipped breakfast. Have lunch at the place across the street. I've made the reservation." Maya sighed, her fingers tangling through her hair. He was relentless, and still part of her didn't want him to stop. Maya was annoyed. She knew she should be. But beneath the exasperation, something softer stirred, something far more dangerous. She felt cherished. Caleb didn't just care. He cared in a way that left no room for compromise. Fierce, focused, undeniably possessive. And somehow she didn't push back. With a quiet sigh, she crossed the street as he had instructed. stepping into the elegant restaurant he'd chosen. The space glowed with soft gold light, refined but intimate. Then she saw him. Her breath caught. Caleb sat at a secluded table in the back, already waiting, his dark suit perfectly tailored. His gaze locked on her the moment she walked in, sharp, smoldering, and utterly unreadable. "I thought you were working," she said, sliding into the seat across from him. He smirked, that familiar flicker of mischief in his eyes. Then I realized I couldn't get through the day without seeing you." Her heart stuttered. "Caleb." "I told you," he murmured, reaching across the table to take her hand in his grip firm and warm. "I don't do casual. When I want something, I don't hold back." He leaned in, his voice lower now. "And I want you." Maya's throat tightened. "This is moving fast. Not fast enough." His fingers curled more tightly around hers, his gaze igniting with unspoken promises. "Tonight. You're coming back to me." She should have said no. She should have asked for time, space, clarity. But as she looked into the eyes of the man who had upended every part of her life, the truth became blindingly clear. She didn't want to resist. "Okay?" she whispered. His smirk deepened. "Good girl." And just like that, she was his again. That night, the moment Maya stepped back into the penthouse, Caleb was already moving. The door had barely clicked shut before he had her pressed against it, his mouth crashing into hers with the heat of every hour he had waited. "I needed this all damn day," he growled, lifting her effortlessly. "I need you, Maya." Every inch, every breath, her body melted into his as he carried her to the bedroom, their clothes lost along the way. What followed was fire, pure and consuming, confessions in hushed voices, gasps that echoed off the walls, touches that left her shaking. He worshipped her, not just with his body, but with the kind of reverence that made her feel sacred, and afterward tangled in the sheets, breathless and flushed. Maya lay in his arms, no longer unsure, no longer just addicted. She was in love, and there was no turning back. His fingers traced idle patterns along her spine. The air was heavy with the warmth they had created, still thick with the scent of him, sharp cologne and something darker. Unmistakably, Caleb. She should have been asleep, but sleep was far from her. Her thoughts raced. Her chest rose and fell too quickly. "You're still awake," Caleb murmured beside her, his voice rough and full of quiet satisfaction. Maya turned to face him, her cheeks warming under his gaze that familiar way. He looked at her like the rest of the world didn't exist. "I can't sleep," she said softly. He smiled lazily, his fingers tilting her chin up. "Thinking about me." She rolled her eyes, but her heart betrayed her. It fluttered fast and certain. "You're impossible." He chuckled, but then the humor faded. His eyes changed, softened, deepened. He brushed her hair back, his fingers sliding through the strands before resting at the nape of her neck. His lips touched her forehead so gentle it made her ache. "You drive me crazy," he whispered, voice husky with emotion. "I can't stop thinking about you, and I don't want to stop." Maya's breath caught. There were no more lines left to cross and nothing left to hold back. "Dei la fenem, ibnc vitl I huan toantheo ungfong kach mabinen yukiu, emchirkimaksuki chi usautam livati pen I emchtrui, en anfatri nan shuyen sut kach fingen tersi. Part 14, The Point of No Return. He hovered above her, their bodies pressed close, his breath warm against her cheek, his eyes locked with hers, burning with something too intense to name. "I've never wanted anyone the way I want you," Caleb whispered, his voice fraying at the edges. "This isn't just desire anymore. It's something more, and I don't think I can control it." Maya's chest rose and fell beneath him, her heart thudding against her ribs. This was a man who built empires with sheer force of will, who commanded boardrooms and never flinched in the face of power. But now he looked at her like she was the only thing that could undo him. Her fingers traced the line of his jaw gently, reverently. "Caleb, are you saying you?" But he didn't let her finish. His mouth crashed into hers in a kiss that swallowed words and breath and doubt. A kiss that said everything he couldn't. Maya melted into him, her hands gripping his shoulders as he deepened the kiss, pressing her into the mattress with a desperation that sent chills through her body. When he finally broke away, his forehead rested against hers. Their breaths tangled. "I don't know how to do this," he admitted, voice rough with uncertainty. "I don't know how to love, or be what you need. But I know one thing." His eyes searched hers unguarded now. "I can't let you go." Maya cupped his face, her touch, soft grounding. "You don't have to be perfect," she whispered. "You just have to be real." Something flickered behind his eyes, something that looked like vulnerability. But before he could respond, the phone on the nightstand buzzed, slicing through the moment. He cursed under his breath and reached for it. One glance and his entire demeanor shifted. "What is it?" Maya asked, concern tightening in her chest. "Work," he muttered, jaw clenched. "Something I have to deal with." She sat up with him, wrapping the sheets around herself. "Do you have to go now?" He hesitated, torn the man, the lover, the empire. Then he turned back to her, cradling her face in both hands. "I'll be back before you even miss me." She nodded, though a strange ache bloomed quietly in her chest as she watched him get dressed, every movement efficient, practiced. Just before he reached the door, he paused. His eyes found hers again, fierce and unyielding. "Maya," he said, voice low and rough, "you're mine. And when I come back, I'm going to remind you of that every damn way I know how." A shiver ran through her. Then he was gone. The hours stretched like thread pulled too tight. Maya sat by the window wrapped in one of Caleb's crisp white shirts, her bare legs curled beneath her. The penthouse was silent, but her heart wasn't. It pounded with need, with ache, with the weight of everything she felt and couldn't name. The city sparkled below, glittering through the glass, like 1,000 broken stars, but it couldn't distract her. Not from the memory of him. Not from the ghost of his hands on her skin, the low timbre of his voice still echoing in her mind. "You're mine." The terrifying part wasn't that he had said it. It was that she had believed it, because somewhere between the nights and the whispered promises, she had fallen for him. So deeply, so completely, that there was no way back. She had never meant to let it happen. Never expected to meet someone who could disarm her with just a look. Who could unravel everything she thought she knew about love. But Caleb Rowan had turned her world inside out. And now, as she waited for him to return, wrapped in his scent, haunted by his touch, she knew she didn't just want him. She needed him. The soft click of the front door unlocking was barely a sound, but to Maya it may as well have been thunder. She turned her head sharply, breath catching in her throat, and then he was there. Caleb Rowan, tall, composed. Devastating in a way that made her body tighten without warning. His tailored suit hung perfectly from broad shoulders, his tie loosened, the top buttons of his shirt undone, revealing just enough of his chest to make her forget how to breathe. His eyes found her instantly, blue blazing. Not with affection, not even with longing, but with something darker, something wild, something dangerous. The energy in the room shifted, heavy, electric, inevitable. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His presence spoke. His silence commanded, and Maya, wrapped in one of his crisp shirts, fingers tightening around the fabric, felt her heart race in response. He moved slowly toward her, deliberate and intense, like a predator closing in on what was already his. Then, without a word, he stood in front of her, towering still, One hand reached for hers. The other tilted her chin upward gently, but with absolute control. And when her gaze met his, she forgot every excuse she'd rehearsed. "You're still awake," he murmured. The sound of his voice, low, rough, unmistakably possessive, sent shivers down her spine. She tried to steady her breath. "I couldn't sleep," she whispered. He smiled, but it wasn't amusement. It was hunger. "Were you thinking about me?" She wanted to deny it, wanted to look away, but the truth was already there, written across her face. "You're impossible," she muttered instead. He chuckled, but the sound was dark, tinged with something primal. "You have no idea how much I wanted to come back to you," he said, stepping closer. "I spent the entire night wanting you, needing you." His fingers found their way into her hair, pulling her gently, insistently toward him. "I should have never left," he whispered, his lips brushing the shell of her ear. Her breath caught again. "Then why did you?" He paused, jaw tightening. His hands gripped her waist with force, barely restrained. "Because if I hadn't," he said, voice low and hoarse, "I would have lost control. I would have spent all night proving you're mine over and over until you forgot everything. But my name." Maya gasped, heat flooding her body at the words, "Caleb." His mouth hovered over hers, not kissing, just close enough to drive her mad. "Tell me you missed me," he growled. She bit her lip, determined not to give in so easily. But Caleb wasn't a man who waited patiently for what he believed belonged to him. With a quiet, guttural sound, he lifted her into his arms, his hold unyielding. Maya gasped instinctively, wrapping her arms around his neck as he carried her toward the bedroom. The door slammed shut behind them, and then there was only heat. The second her back hit the mattress, he was there, his body covering hers, surrounding her, claiming every inch of space around her. His hands explored her like they had been starved. Every touch left trails of fire. Every kiss stole what little breath she had left. "You're mine," he said against her lips, voice thick with need. His hand moved lower, slower, igniting every nerve beneath his touch. "Every inch of you belongs to me." Maya arched against him, her fingers digging into his back. "Then prove it," and he did. Again and again. The night became a blur of tangled limbs, whispered names, and waves of need that crashed and built and never stopped. He didn't just touch her. He claimed her, worshipped her, possessed her, until there was nothing left between them but truth and surrender, and the dangerous certainty that she no longer belonged to herself. She belonged to him, and perhaps more terrifying, more beautiful, he belonged to her too. It wasn't just passion anymore, it was something deeper, something unspoken and unbreakable, something that neither of them could name, but both of them felt in the silence between breaths, in the weight of every touch. Hours passed outside, the darkness dissolved into the first pale light of morning, but they hadn't slept. Maya lay wrapped in Caleb's arms, her body molded to his, her skin still tingling with the remnants of everything they had shared. His fingertips traced soft circles along her back, and every so often he pressed quiet kisses to her shoulder, each one gentler than the last. "You're not just some fleeting moment to me," he whispered, his voice hoarse, like it had carried too much truth for too long. "You never were." Maya turned her head slowly, her pulse quickening. "Then what am I?" His eyes met hers, blue and burning, with something so deep, so complete, it made her breath stop. Everything he said. And she believed him. In that moment, Maya knew there was no undoing this. She was his, and he was hers. They stayed like that, tangled in each other, the warmth of his embrace grounding her in a way nothing ever had before. Her fingers skimmed the hard ridges of his chest, then stopped just above his heart. She kissed him there softly, reverently. Caleb stirred his arm, tightening instinctively around her waist, as though even in sleep he feared she might vanish. His eyes opened slowly, still dark with the remnants of passion, but beneath that, something more dangerous. Obsession, devotion, a love that had already begun to consume them both. "You're still here," he murmured, voice gravely tracing the line of her spine with slow, deliberate care. She smiled against his skin, pressing closer. "I didn't want to leave your arms." He shifted, then rolling over her, his weight a comforting anchor, his arms caging her in. "Good!" He breathed, lips brushing her forehead, then her cheek, her jaw, until finally they found her mouth. "Because I don't ever want you to leave." "Not now." His voice dropped thick with emotion. "Not ever." Maya's hands curled into the sheets, her pulse racing as he kissed her again, slow but demanding. Every touch, every word pulled her deeper into him. Into this. There was no space for anything else, only him. Only the way he made her feel, desired, worshipped, seen. Caleb broke the kiss slowly, his fingers sweeping back a strand of hair from her face as he looked at her. "Really looked, Maya," he said, and his voice trembled just slightly. "Do you even understand what you've done to me?" She held his gaze. "I was fine before you," he continued, in control, focused. "My world was manageable." He exhaled, shaking his head, his jaw clenched like the words hurt to say. "And then you walked in, and now I can't breathe without you. I can't think straight unless I know you're here, with me in my arms, where you belong." Maya's heart ached at the rawness in his voice, at how vulnerable it made him, and how desperately she wanted to take that ache and carry it with him. Her fingers rose to his cheek, cupping his face with trembling tenderness. "I don't want to be anywhere else," she whispered. "I don't want anyone else. I'm yours." Caleb's breath hitched, then he kissed her, not with fire, but with something slower, deeper. A kiss that sealed the vow between them. One neither of them needed to speak out loud anymore, because they already knew there was no going back. Only forward together. Caleb touched her like she was sacred. Every whisper, every brush of his hand, every kiss that lingered too long, it all spoke the same truth. She belonged to him, and he belonged to her. The hours passed in a blur of breathless sighs and tangled sheets of skin against skin, and the kind of love that didn't ask for permission. He made love to her as if he was carving his name into her soul, as if imprinting himself onto every memory. Every heartbeat was the only way to keep her close. By the time the first light of morning crept in through the curtains, the room glowed with soft gold. Maya lay curled in Caleb's arms. Her body spent, her heart aching, not from pain, but from fullness. She drew lazy shapes on his chest with her fingertips, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat beneath her cheek. His hand skimmed her spine slowly, as if he couldn't bear to let even an inch of space exist between them. Then he spoke. "Maya." His voice was rough, unguarded. "I want forever with you." She stilled. Her breath caught as she slowly pulled back to look at him, to read the lines of his face. "Forever," she repeated barely above a whisper. All she saw in his eyes was certainty, devotion, and a need so deep it mirrored her own. Caleb nodded his thumb, tracing the curve of her cheek. "Yes, forever. I don't just want you in my bed, Maya. I want you in my life. I want to wake up with you every morning, fall asleep with you every night. I want all of it, all of you." Tears welled in her eyes, unspoken joy and disbelief flooding her chest. "Caleb," her voice trembled as she cupped his face, feeling the warmth of his skin beneath her trembling hands. He exhaled slowly, almost like bracing himself, and then he leaned in, his lips brushed against hers, soft as breath, before he whispered, "Marry me." The world stopped spinning. Maya stared at him, stunned. The weight of those two words settled over her like silk and stone, heavy and beautiful and irreversible. Marry him, be his forever. Her heart soared, warmth rushing through her so fast it left her dizzy. But before she could speak, before she could even gather her thoughts, his phone buzzed sharply on the nightstand. The moment shattered. Caleb's jaw tensed. He cursed quietly, dragging a hand through his already tousled hair as he picked it up. "What is it?" Maya asked, her voice soft, uncertain. He glanced at the screen. The shift in his face was immediate, from vulnerable lover to something colder, sharper. "Work," he said curtly. "Something urgent." Maya sat up, clutching the sheet to her chest, the warmth fading from the space between them. "Do you have to go now?" He turned to her, his gaze softening only slightly as he cupped her face in his hands. "I'll be back soon," he promised. "And when I do, we finish this conversation." She nodded, her throat too tight to speak. He rose from the bed, moving with the same practiced control she had seen a dozen times, and yet now it felt different, distant. But just as he reached the door, he stopped, turned, his eyes locked with hers, his voice low, dark, and possessive. "Don't even think about running." A chill ran through her. "You're mine, Maya, and when I come back, I'll make sure you never forget it." And then he was gone, leaving her in silence, alone. With nothing but the echo of his voice, and the terrifying realization that she was already too far gone to walk away. She had given him everything, her body, her heart, her soul. And now there was no turning back. Maya lay in bed long after Caleb had left, staring up at the ceiling, her thoughts spinning like a storm. Her heart still raced, not from his touch, but from his words. "Marry me." The memory of his voice echoed through her, low and reverent, sending tremors of disbelief and longing down her spine. Had she heard him right? Had the man the world called ruthless, the man who ruled boardrooms with ice in his veins, just asked her to be his forever? She pressed a pillow to her chest, hugging it tightly, breathing in the fading scent of him, musky warm unmistakably. Caleb. How had everything changed so quickly? Just weeks ago, she had been scraping by, one paycheck at a time, one breath at a time. Now she was tangled in silk sheets, her heart wrapped around a man who didn't just claim her. He consumed her, and worse, she let him. She remembered the way he'd touched her the night before, the reverence in his hands, the need in his kiss, the way his voice had curled around her like a vow. "You're mine, Maya. And when I come back, I'll make sure you never forget it." His words were still burned into her skin. There was no pretending anymore. She belonged to Caleb Rowan completely, but was she ready for forever? Could she truly withstand the weight of his love, the force of it, the hunger in it, the way it felt like drowning and flying all at once? A sudden click pulled her from her thoughts, the front door unlocking. Her breath caught as she sat upright in bed, heart hammering. And then he was there, Caleb, disheveled tie, undone, shirt slightly rumpled, as if he'd left one world behind just to crash back into hers. His eyes locked on her, stormy and wild. He didn't speak, he didn't need to. The moment stretched, then he moved. In seconds he was across the room, hands gripping her waist, mouth crashing into hers with the kind of desperation that could undo gravity. She melted into him, her fingers tangling in his hair, the taste of him dizzying. "I couldn't stay away," he murmured against her lips. His voice was rough, breathless. "I don't care about the meeting, the calls. None of it matters. Only you." Maya trembled as he pressed her back into the bed, his weight grounding her, his gaze dark with unrelenting need. "Caleb." But he cut her off with another bruising kiss. "Say yes," he growled, his lips trailing down her neck, his teeth grazing sensitive skin. "Tell me you'll marry me. Tell me you'll be mine. Forever." Her breath came in shallow waves, his touch leaving her mind hazy, her thoughts scattered like ash. Caleb. He pulled back just enough to look at her, his hands still holding her as if letting go would ruin him. His voice dropped raw and vulnerable. Do you love me? The question struck her like lightning, not because she didn't know the answer, but because she did. Her heart clenched. She reached up her hand, cradling his face, her thumb brushing the corner of his mouth. Yes, she whispered, her voice breaking. I love you so much it scares me. His breath hitched. A sound, half exhale, half relief escaped him. Then he was kissing her again, not for pleasure, not for control, but to seal it, to pour every unspoken vow into her mouth, into her soul. He kissed her until she forgot how to be anything but his. And this time she didn't just surrender, she chose him. Then marry me. The words left Caleb's lips in a whisper, his forehead resting against hers, breath mingling between them. Be mine, Maya. Forever tears welled in her eyes. Her heart pounded like thunder in a cathedral, and then softly, yes, just one word, but it changed everything. A sound escaped him, low, raw, almost a groan of relief and hunger entwined. Then his mouth found hers deep and fierce, as if he could pull the promise straight from her soul. His hands roamed over her body, reverent and possessive, memorizing her as if she were the map to everything he'd ever lost. You won't regret this, he murmured, voice hoarse with emotion. I'll spend every day showing you how much I love you, how much I need you. Maya smiled against his lips, her fingers gently outlining the sharp lines of his face. You already do, she whispered. He exhaled, forehead pressed to hers, holding her like she was made of light and fire. Then let me show you again. And he did. That night unraveled like a vow, whispered promises in the dark, tangled sheets and soft moans, the kind of love that silences every doubt. Caleb didn't just love her, he worshipped her, with every breath, with every inch of skin, with every unspoken truth that lived only in their touch. Outside the city, lights flickered like stars scattered across the skyline. Inside, time folded itself around them. I want us to get married soon, he whispered later, his lips tracing lazy kisses along her shoulder. Maya let out a contented sigh, burying herself deeper into his arms. I can't wait. Caleb tilted her chin gently, his eyes gleaming with mischief. Neither can I. Then teasingly, he tugged at the edge of the sheet. But until then, I need more nights with you. Maya laughed softly, her arms wrapping around his neck. Then take them. Caleb, take all of them. And he did. The night stretched on velvet and wild, filled with heat, with reverence, with a passion so consuming it became its own kind of language. The city shimmered through the glass walls of the penthouse, but inside, nothing existed except them. Maya lay beneath him, breathless, her chest rising and falling in rhythm with his. He kissed his way down the length of her throat, his hands trailing slow and purposeful, as though touching her were an act of faith. It had all begun with one night. A mistake, a chance, a spark neither of them could explain. But now, she couldn't remember a version of her life that didn't have him in it. And tonight, with one word, she had sealed that truth forever. Caleb's body hovered over hers, his every movement filled with aching control. His lips moved slowly across her skin as if worshipping every breath she took. You're mine now, he whispered, voice low, reverent, dangerous. Do you understand what that means? Maya gasped as he nipped gently at her shoulder, her hands diving into his hair, pulling him closer. Tell me. She breathed, her voice trembling. He lifted his gaze to hers, intense, unwavering. It means you belong to me always. No matter where you go, no matter what happens, you'll be in my arms, in my bed, in my heart. His thumb brushed her cheek, tender, achingly careful. It means I will never let you go. Her heart pounded. No one had ever looked at her this way. No one had ever claimed her, not with lust, but with love. I don't want to go anywhere, she whispered back. I want to be with you. A low growl rumbled deep in Caleb's chest. Then his mouth found hers, fierce, unrelenting in a kiss, so consuming it stole the very air from her lungs. His arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her impossibly close until their bodies were one, until the space between them no longer existed. Maya felt his need, his hunger, his love unfiltered and raw, pouring into every touch, every breath. It made her dizzy, made her his. Caleb broke the kiss, his forehead resting against hers, his breath hot and uneven. Maya, he rasped, voice rough with emotion, say it again. She smiled, her hands cupping his face, her fingers memorizing the sharp planes of the man she had come to love beyond reason. I love you, she whispered. I love you so much. A shudder passed through him, and then he was kissing her again, not tenderly this time, but with urgency, with desperation. He kissed her like she was the only thing keeping him alive, and she let him. She gave him everything, her body, her trust, her soul, because she already knew Caleb wasn't just the man she loved. He was the one she could never walk away from. Time slipped away unnoticed, swallowed by whispered vows and tangled limbs. The world outside faded. Only they existed. And when exhaustion finally wrapped around them like a blanket, Caleb pulled her tightly against his chest, as if the act of holding her could bind them beyond flesh. His fingers traced lazy patterns on her back. His lips brushed her forehead. I'll never get enough of you. He whispered, his voice thick. Not in this life. Not in the next. Maya smiled drowsily against his chest, her heart aching with tenderness. Good, she murmured, because I don't ever want you to stop. Caleb chuckled softly, his arms tightening around her. Tomorrow, he said, we start planning the wedding. I don't want to wait. I want you as my wife. Now. She looked up, eyes shining, her fingers brushed gently over his lips. Then let's do it, she whispered. Let's get married. Caleb. His gaze darkened, not with lust, but with something deeper, something eternal. You have no idea how happy you've made me. She smiled. I think I do. He kissed her again, slow, reverent, a silent promise woven into the spaces between their breaths. You're everything to me. Maya, he said. Forehead pressed to hers and her voice trembled as she replied, You're everything to me too. They drifted into sleep, wrapped in each other's arms, hearts, steady breath aligned, and Maya knew without question that she had found the love of her life in just a few days. She would become his wife. The wedding day. The day had finally come. The grand ballroom of the city's most luxurious hotel shimmered like a dream. Golden chandeliers cast warm light over soft white roses cascading from the ceiling. The scent of fresh lilies lingered gently in the air. Every detail had been crafted with care, not just for beauty, but for meaning, because this wasn't just a wedding. This was the moment. Caleb Rowan, powerful, guarded, untouchable, would bind himself forever to the only woman who had ever truly seen him, and loved him anyway. Maya stood in the dressing room, her gown hugging every curve like it had been made for her soul, not just her body. Her eyes sparkled, her heart was steady. She wasn't just walking toward a man, she was walking into forever. Maya stood before the mirror, her breath catching as her fingers gently touched the edge of the lace veil draped delicately over her shoulders. The gown fit her, like it was made not just for her body, but for her soul. A second skin. A quiet promise. Her heart pounded in her chest, nerves and wonder intertwining like threads of silk. She had never imagined love like this. Love that burned, love that healed, love that consumed her and made her feel more alive than ever before. Behind her, the door creaked open. She gasped softly, and then there he was. Caleb Rowan, sharp suit, fierce eyes, unapologetically him, and more breathtaking than she had ever seen him. He wasn't supposed to see her before the ceremony. But Caleb had never been one to follow rules. His gaze locked onto her, and in that moment everything inside her stilled. I couldn't wait. He said, his voice a low whisper, already thick with emotion. He stepped forward, reaching for her fingers, brushing against her cheek like she was made of light. You look like a dream. Color bloomed on her face as she met his eyes. You're not supposed to be here, she murmured. But she didn't stop him when he pulled her into his arms, holding her close. I don't care about traditions, he whispered, pressing a kiss to her temple. I just needed to see you. Needed to remind myself that this is real, that in minutes, you'll be mine, forever. Her fingers curled into the fabric of his suit. I've always been yours, she whispered, since the moment we met. His jaw tightened, then he cupped her face and kissed her deep, anchoring unforgettable. He kissed her like he was marking her soul, I love you. He breathed against her lips, and I can't wait to spend every day proving that tears welled in her eyes. Her hands brushed across his face, memorizing him all over again. Then let's go, she whispered, voice trembling with joy. Let's get married. The ceremony. The ceremony was something out of a dream. As Maya walked down the aisle, her eyes never left Caleb. The world faded. The whispers, the guests, the golden chandeliers above all disappeared. There was only him, the man who had once been a storm. Now her forever Caleb stood waiting, hands trembling slightly, jaw tight, but his eyes never left hers. And when she reached him, when her hand slid into his, something clicked into place. Home. The officiant spoke, but Caleb barely heard. All he saw, all he felt, was Maya. Then came the moment, his vow. I, Caleb Rowan, take you, Maya, to be my wife, he said, his voice steady but full of tremor just beneath, to have and to hold in light and shadow, in wealth or in want. From this day forward you are my world, my center. My every breath I will love you, protect you, and stand beside you in this life, and whatever comes after. Tears slipped down Maya's cheeks as she found her voice trembling and radiant. I, Maya Ellison, take you, Caleb, to be my husband. You are my best friend, my strength, my safe place. I vow to walk beside you through every joy, every storm. My heart is yours, now, always, forever. Caleb's grip on her hands tightened. His eyes burned with emotion, too vast for words. And then, as the officiant spoke, the final words that made them husband and wife. He didn't wait. He pulled her close and kissed her, full of fire, full of love, full of everything that had ever lived between them. The crowd erupted into applause. But in Caleb's world there was only her, only Maya. And against her lips he whispered the only word that still mattered, mine. She laughed, her tears mixing with joy, because she was, and always would be, forever. Maya whispered, her hands gently weaving through Caleb's hair. Their wedding night unfolded like a storm of passion and promise. Caleb carried her into the honeymoon suite, his eyes lit with a hunger that had only deepened with love. The door slammed shut behind them, but the world had already disappeared the moment they touched. Maya gasped, caught between breath and flame as Caleb pressed her against the wall, his mouth claiming hers in a kiss that sent heat through her bones. You're mine now, Mrs. Rowan? He growled against her lips, his hands exploring every curve as if to memorize what was already etched into his soul. And I intend to make sure you never forget it, she moaned, arching into him, her fingers fisting the fabric of his shirt. Then show me, she whispered. He did, slowly, reverently. He undressed her like she was something sacred, every inch revealed, every breath shared, every moment a vow. Their bodies tangled together, moving in perfect rhythm, a symphony of heat and devotion. This wasn't just passion. This was home. Hours passed, But Caleb couldn't stop touching her, kissing her, holding her like she might vanish. And when they finally lay wrapped in silk sheets, spent and glowing, he pulled her close. His lips touched her forehead. "I love you," he murmured, tracing soft patterns along her back. Maya smiled, heart overflowing. "I love you too." He exhaled deeply, his arms tightening around her. "Sleep, my love," he whispered, "because soon we'll have another reason to celebrate." She blinked, eyebrows drawing together. "What do you mean?" Caleb smiled, something deep and knowing gleaming in his eyes. "I just have a feeling," he whispered. His hand slipped gently over her stomach. And just like that, their story began a new chapter. 9 months later, Maya lay in Caleb's arms, her body trembling with exhaustion, her heart full in ways she never knew possible. Cradled against her chest was a tiny, perfect miracle. A daughter. Their daughter. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she looked at the tiny hand curled around her finger, her heart cracking open wider than it ever had. Caleb pressed a kiss to her temple, his eyes glassy with emotion. "She's beautiful," he whispered. Maya sniffled, brushing her fingertips over their baby girl's delicate features. "She's ours," Caleb exhaled, his voice filled with reverence. "Yes, she is." He looked at Maya, the woman who had changed everything, my wife, my forever. She smiled through tears, threading her fingers into his. "Forever, Caleb." He leaned down and kissed her soft, lingering, full of every promise they had ever made. And as their baby girl cooed softly between them, a family was born, not of perfection, but of love, unshakable, real, eternal. Years later, time passed, but Caleb's love for Maya only grew stronger. It deepened, matured, but it never dulled. He stood in the doorway of their sun-washed villa, watching as Maya sat in the garden, sunlight tangled in her hair. Their daughter, little Stella, giggled in her lap as Maya gently braided her soft, dark curls. Caleb leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, a quiet smirk playing on his lips. This was everything. The ruthless CEO the world once feared had become something else entirely. A husband, a father, a man who had found the very thing he never believed he deserved. Peace and love that asked for nothing but everything. Are you just going to stand there and stare? Mr. Rowan Maya's teasing voice floated across the air, pulling him back into the warmth of now. He grinned. "I might," he said, stepping down toward them. "You're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." She rolled her eyes, laughing. "And here I thought you were talking about the roses." "Nope," he said, scooping Stella into his arms and leaning in to kiss Maya. "I'm looking at my whole world. And in that moment, in that garden, with the sun glowing through the leaves and laughter dancing through the air, their story, once born of fire, now lived in light." A soft giggle broke Caleb from his thoughts. He looked up to see Maya and their daughter still sitting under the golden canopy of late afternoon light. And just like that, everything else disappeared. A slow, unguarded smile spread across his lips as he stepped away from the doorway, crossing the garden in quiet strides. "Can you blame me?" he murmured, bending down to kiss Maya. Slow, lingering, his hand cradling the back of her neck. "I have the most beautiful wife in the world." His voice dropped lower as he turned toward the small girl beside her and a daughter who's just as breathtaking. Stella giggled, her chubby fingers reaching out. "Daddy, kiss me too," she demanded, her lower lip jutting out in a dramatic pout. Caleb chuckled, sweeping her into his arms. "How could I resist my princess?" he said, peppering kisses across her cheeks as she squealed with laughter. Maya watched them, her heart melting at the sight. The man she had once feared was too closed off for love. Now knelt in the grass, laughing with their daughter, a father, a husband, a man who had built a life of power, but found his purpose in love. As the evening sun dipped lower, casting warm amber hues across the lawn, Caleb settled beside Maya, his arm draped over her shoulders. Stella hummed quietly as she played with her dolls in the grass nearby. Caleb turned to Maya, eyes soft, glowing with a tenderness that words couldn't quite capture. "Maya," he whispered, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Are you happy?" She smiled, her fingers gently tracing the line of his jaw. "I've never been happier," she said. "You've given me everything." But Caleb shook his head, his forehead gently resting against hers. "No," he whispered. "You gave me everything. You gave me love when I didn't even know I needed it. You gave me Stella. You gave me a family. You gave me a reason to believe in forever." Her eyes shimmered as she cupped his face. Then quietly, she whispered back, "Forever." He kissed her again, deep and slow, pouring every ounce of love into it. Every silent vow, every shared breath, every part of him that had once been unreachable, now fully hers. And as Stella giggled beside them as the sun kissed the horizon, Caleb held his world in his arms. No matter how many years would pass, no matter how many nights they would share, he would never stop choosing her, never stop loving her, because she wasn't just his wife. She was his home, his beginning, his always, and this was the kind of love that would last a lifetime. And just like that, their story found its forever. From strangers in the night to soulmates under the sun, Caleb and Maya didn't just fall in love. They built it day by day, touch by touch, promise by promise. Their journey wasn't perfect, but it was real, raw, aching, beautiful. A love that burned, then softened. A love that never asked for less, but always gave more. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that love, even the most unexpected kind, is always worth fighting for, then don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Shining Stories, because here every story has a soul and every soul deserves to be heard. Until next time, keep feeling, keep believing, and above all, keep loving.